Welcome to The Difference of 13. We are back for another episode here. We have an amazing guest with us. I'm actually pretty excited that he's here.
I know, because he's usually
behind the scenes,
behind
the camera.
We dragged him out.
The man, the myth, the legend of the audio of this experience, Mr. Caleb Stern. How are you, Caleb?
Good. It's good to be here on this side of the camera and, speakers, I guess.
It's a whole nother world.
Yeah,
it is.
So we're excited for wherever you're listening. If you're in the car, if you're just putting off being productive, thank you for doing so and hanging out with us. My name's Chris.
And I'm Terry.
And we have obviously Caleb here with us today. And we're going to be talking about a topic that I think hits home to all of us in terms of, just when stuff not going so good. How do you changing perspective? How do you deal with it? I don't know. How else would you describe it?
Well, for me, having a chronic illness, adapting my life. I mean, I know life changes for everybody, but sometimes when you have a chronic, particularly a progressive illness, adapting with those changes that happen, and how do you kind of keep going?
For me, I guess I would say that kind of it's about compromising and not giving up the things you want while still doing what you need to do in order to feel well.
Do you want to give the listeners a little bit of background of the challenges you face?
So I've got a lot going on. So
a lot goes on behind the camera.
Yes.
So I've got autism spectrum disorder, anxiety and depression, chronic migraines, and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So I've got a lot of chronic pain on top of, psychological and psychiatric issues. So things are...
It gets complicated.
Yeah. Things are complicated for me sometimes.
Yeah. So, and I have Ehlers-Danlos and some kind of weird heart thing going on. And you had a big heart thing.
I mean, compared to what you guys go through, mine's good.
Yours was really big in one nutshell.
It was really big, but really short.
Yeah. So and I have obviously a congenital heart defect that led to an aortic aneurysm that solid 8 inches replaced in my aorta.
Still gives me chills.
Chest cut open a couple of years ago. So, I think no matter, if you're listening to this and you're experiencing, anything challenging, and this doesn't have to be a medical challenge. Mm-hmm. This could be a divorce. It could be,
right.
It could be anything really in life that's a challenge, or you want to call it a crucible per se. But I think everybody's going to experience it differently to a degree. And what we wanted to do today was kind of bring up, maybe strategies and that have worked for us, but then also, suggestions or things that we've learned, and maybe even talk about things that don't work for us.
Yeah.
Like you going home after being here for 4 hours instead of staying for 8 when it's going to wreck you the next day. But so why don't you ladies first, Terry? Why don't you?
Well, and that's a good point. For me, a lot of my identity has always been that I'm a hard worker. I can, work circles around people half my age. I don't know what it's like to not work hard. I worked full-time while going to college full-time. I don't know what it's like to, quote, relax and take it easy. So for me to have to go home after only 4 hours of work, when the rest of you guys are putting in 12, 14-hour days, it makes me feel like I'm a slacker. Like I'm not.
We just tell you we're here 12 or 14 hours. We actually leave right after you.
Or y'all just sit around and drink, you know.
Yeah, we have a tracker on your car. When you get within 5 miles, we start
she's
working.
She's gone. But yeah, kind of that changing my identity of myself, because there was so much of it ingrained in being a hard worker. And to walk out of here after only doing 4 hours, I feel bad about myself. I feel like I, quote, should be able to do more. And that really has been hard for me to accept. And I'm still working on accepting that, clearly, because I don't know how to leave after only 4 hours.
So what have you found that's been helpful, or talk more in depth about how are you dealing with that?
Well, one of my doctors told me that rest is actually important work. And I have to remember that. So for me, I need more rest than the average person. And I have to remember when I'm resting, I'm not wasting time. That's time that my body needs to heal and recuperate so that when I do come in for 4 hours, I'm coming in fully functional for 4 hours instead of coming in at 50% because I've been dragging myself too hard.
Like I said, it's compromising. You're, you're spending that time, maybe not working, but it's getting you ready so that you can work to the capacity you need to the rest of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's, with anything, it's working smarter, not necessarily harder.
Yeah.
And setting yourself up, here at Par for Success, we have the Whoop bands, shout out to Whoop, which actually they're a lagging metric in terms of recovery, but they shed a lot of light for me personally and a lot of our athletes in terms of, when you have a very stressful day or you don't sleep, what sort of impact does that have on you for the next day upcoming? And for me in particular, like I noticed personally, if I have 2 drinks within 2 hours of going to bed, because that's the metric that they ask you, my sleep is actually 20% worse, and my recovery is way worse, and then I feel like crap the next day. So I now day drink on Sundays.
Nice.
But it's a compromise. I still would like to have a beer or two, watch some golf maybe. But it's understanding your body, and I think what we're probably all experiencing is, what at least I can speak from my own experience, is it forced me to acutely be aware of how much exertion I was doing, how was I feeling at that point, and hey, maybe it is time to go lay down, as hard as that is to actually accept.
Yeah. Yeah, and like Caleb was saying with the, the compromise, I've had to learn that if I have plans for the weekend, first off, I need to limit those plans. I can't go out Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday and think that I'm going to be able to do anything by Monday or even Sunday. So a lot of it is looking ahead in the calendar. What do I have coming up? And knowing that I need to take it easy, the day before, the day of, so that I am actually able to go out and enjoy these events. But sometimes it means turning down things. This weekend, I was invited to several different events. They all happen to be on the same weekend. And I kind of had to pick and choose. And while that's disappointing, I have to remember that at least I'm able to go out and do something. So instead of focusing on what I can't do, I try to focus on, I'm getting out to do these things. And it could be worse. Yeah,
no, that rationing of the time and energy, that's definitely something that I'm very familiar with.
What strategies have been helpful for you, Caleb?
Well, so like Terry said, like the idea of looking ahead in the calendar, like just for me, it's more of on a day-to-day basis than it is on a whole week basis. But, looking at my day and saying, well, these are the things that are going to happen. So what can I get done? When can I get it done? What are my times of peak energy? And when can I, take some time to rest and get myself a little more energy for when I have to get something done? And so, I have really slow mornings. And so that's just something that I've learned that I have to deal with, is that, if I take it really easy in the mornings, but then, in the afternoons when someone else might be like, oh, I'll go take an afternoon nap. No, that's when I'm going to be working.
That's when you're most productive.
Yeah.
The energy levels are
best.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that is part of it, kind of figuring out your own rhythm of the day, what kind of works best for you. Now, some people aren't as fortunate as we are to have kind of flexible work hours, but as much as you can adapt to that, I think that's really helpful with understanding, and also a timing of medication. I found 2 of the medicines that I need to take, if I took them in the morning, I was just dragging through the day, but I take them later in the evening so that fatigue, sleepiness happens at night.
Yeah, absolutely. I've messed around with the timing of my medication a bunch before I got to where I'm comfortable with it. And I mean, it still might not be in the right place. I've, recently been dealing with some sleep issues, and I did a sleep study, and we're still kind of going over the results of that. And, my medications might change again. I might have to change when I take them. And, it's a process because things are always changing.
Yeah.
How much of that have you guys found is like, can you bounce off the doctors or is helped by them versus how much of that is self-directed by you guys?
As far as the when to take the medications, like they'll say, oh, well, some people have reported such and such, but really, you just kind of have to experiment a little bit with
trial and error. Now, definitely need to ask the doctor. Doesn't matter what time of day I take it.
If they say absolutely take it at a certain time or absolutely do not take it at a certain time, you have to listen to that. If they say take it with food, you take it with food. Like you do have to listen to what they say. But if they just say, some people have reported something, then it's you have some leeway to experiment for what works with you.
Yeah. And I found kind of keeping a little diary of, I tried taking it at this time and this is what happened the next day. And it kind of educates me as to what's going to work.
Yeah.
And has that shift in terms of, call it acceptance or, shifting of your self-image or whatever we want to call it, how long has that, do you feel like that has happened? Like, is there like a certain moment where it just kind of boom and it's better or it's different, or is that a slow, how does that work?
It's a very slow process. And I find it kind of peaks and valleys. There's times where I'm kind of like, okay, this is what I've got. I got a great attitude. We'll just roll with it. And then other times I just really beat myself up over it.
It's absolutely not just a static progression. It's not a moment of epiphany. It's an ongoing kind of battle. Some days you're fine with your limitations and you're just doing what you can do, and then other days, man, it sucks, and you just want to be able to go out and do all these things, and you can't, and you feel bad about it.
Yeah, I find sometimes stepping away from social media is like the best thing I can do, because I see my friends going on trips and going out to parties and doing all these fun things. And I'm like, I can't do those things. So it's a little bit of that fear of missing out. Like I see them doing these things and I can't participate. So then I feel bad about myself. But other times I look at that and I get enjoyment from seeing what they're doing. So you just kind of have to
sometimes
take your temperature.
Yeah, sometimes I'll look at social media and, again, it'll be, oh, look at all these cool things people are doing. Why can't I be doing those? Sometimes it's like, oh, well, this is the social interaction I can handle right now. This is what I can do. Mm-hmm. So, I can get enjoyment from this because, this is what I can handle, and I feel good about that.
I think that was one of the biggest issues I struggled with, or questions I struggled with, Kayla, too, was, why me? Why? How come I have to deal with this? How come I can't go do that? Or
right. Because I remember right after your surgery, you wanted to get out there in the gym and lift weights, and we're all like, "No, don't do that. That's going to be bad."
Dude, you still got staples holding your chest together. But and that was for me. That was a lot of it tied into my self identity and my personal identity in terms of who was I as a father, as a husband, as a man.
Yeah, and
it was hard.
I mean, the whole question of why me? That's like a big question. That's like a big philosophical question that I'm pretty sure the three of us aren't going to answer today.
No.
Well, what I actually found that was really helpful is I changed that question on its head and I turned it to why not me?
Yeah.
Why would I wish this? If somebody had to have this, why would I wish this on anybody else? Why not me? Maybe it's given to me for a reason. Maybe it's because, everything that I've experienced living up to this point with growing up with multiple surgeries as kids and that sort of a thing, that maybe I'm positioned in a place having my own business and having an outlet such as this where actually we didn't have this at that time, but we could share the story, go through. Maybe the reason that it is me is because I needed to go through this to experience it, to figure out who I really am, to figure out what's really important to me, what my values are, and then maybe just talking about it could help somebody else, and maybe that's why it was me.
Yeah,
which is why I initially was reluctant to agree to do the podcast in general, but I have found it's been a good thing because I've had comments from people saying, hearing about what you go through helps me go through it too. And if my experiences can help somebody, then that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I would never want anyone else to deal with all the stuff I have to deal with, but if someone else is dealing with it and I can help them, then why wouldn't I want to do that?
Mm-hmm. And we're lucky enough to have Chris is our boss, who allows us a lot of flexibility with schedules. And I mean, seriously, I don't know if I could hold down a regular 9-to-5 job. I mean, I couldn't do 9 to 5.
I mean, I absolutely could not do that. I mean, I work part-time from home, flexible hours, and that pushes me to my limit at this point in my life, honestly. And, I have to be okay with that. And sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. And, when I'm not okay with it, I just have to live with that fact,
Mm-hmm. Well, we both kind of use dark humor a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big coping mechanism.
Yeah.
But I think that brings up a good point, in that there are lots of coping mechanisms. And I think, everybody's going to have their own coping mechanisms that work better for them. And, for me, I'm very type A. And so when I was going through my surgery and, just everything that went around that with the business and, oh my God, how are we going to keep the doors open? My daughter was not even a year old at that point, 2 kids.
Relinquishing control of the business for several weeks.
Right, and coming back and seeing what's going to happen. And so my mechanism was I'd get a lot of anxiety. I would end up getting a lot of anxiety, and my mechanism to cope with that anxiety was to write down all these lists and reorganize everything and kind of put everything. And then once I would write it all down, it'd be okay for a little while. Mm-hmm. And then inevitably it would come back again. And as I've gotten further removed from it and I've learned to deal with it better and better and better, I have to do that less and less. But that's my coping mechanism, is get very hyper-focused, get very hyper-organized, write everything down, get very controlling, try to control everything that I possibly can.
Yeah.
Because that's what anxiety is because you're worried about something that potentially could happen down the road.
Mm-hmm. Now, before your surgery, when you would get, stressed out about stuff, working out was kind of your release, right? Yeah. So post-surgery, that thing that you were used to, you couldn't do.
Right. Well, that was my biggest issue.
How hard was that?
Yeah, it was. I felt like I was out of control. I didn't know, every discomfort that I would have. And, oh my God, am I dying?
Yeah.
Oh my God, is something wrong? Will I make it home to see my kids tonight?
Yeah. Is my chest going to rip open all of a sudden?
I'm convulsing. What the hell? What's going on here? I was fine an hour ago. Now I'm convulsing with shivers and. Yeah. So I think for me it was hugely a control issue, and I think anxiety can tend to be a lot of that. You just feel out of control. So for me, it was the first step was recognizing the feeling of being anxious and what that physically felt like, and then it was not necessarily fixing it. It was just being okay with, I'm anxious about X, Y, or Z, and just dealing with it right then and there, and not letting it fester.
Because that's the thing. You can't ever really get rid of anxiety. You just kind of have to make it not be a problem anymore.
Not let it consume.
Yeah, you have to control the anxiety. You can't get rid of it. And I feel like that's something that people don't really get a lot of the time.
Anxiety is normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you're anxious, you someone telling you that it's going to be okay, that's not going to get rid of your anxiety.
Well, it's kind of like when you're upset and somebody tells you to calm down.
Yeah.
How many of us have ever calmed down from having somebody tell us to calm down? It doesn't work.
Yeah, the anxiety is anxiety kind of knows when you're trying to get rid of it. Mm-hmm. So the best thing you can really do is just try and get a handle on it and move on despite it.
I think one of the greatest analogies, I went to counseling after, and the greatest analogies that the therapist told me was anxiety is like a 2-year-old or 3-year-old kid who wants your attention. Mm-hmm. And they're going to tug on your pants and say, Daddy, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me. And if you don't look at them and you keep doing what you're doing and you try to ignore them, they don't go away. No. They yell harder. They throw a tantrum on the floor. They kick, they scream, they start breaking stuff.
Yeah, and if you try to tell them to go away, then
they cry.
Yeah.
They get upset. But if you just say, oh, okay, let me see, and you acknowledge it, they do their 2 spins and then they run away and they're happy. Yeah. And I think that's dealing with tough medical stuff or relationship stuff, financial stuff. acknowledging that the anxiety is there is the first step. And then I think accepting that it sucks, as you said, Caleb, but it's okay. It's normal. It's totally normal to have that. And then trying to figure out, what is your coping mechanism?
Yeah.
For a while, for me, it was alcohol, which wasn't good. But, and I think that's where a lot of people will go down the drug and alcohol path a lot of the times. But then I think that's where you look at, whether therapists or seeing a doctor in terms of if they can help you. But there's lots of resources out there that can be used, and you just need to figure out what the coping mechanism is for you. There's not one that's gonna
and I mean,
across the board.
if you're really hard pressed and you don't know what your coping mechanism is, you can't see a therapist or you can't see one soon enough. Honestly, you can Google coping strategies for anxiety. Like, it's not, you're gonna have to take the advice with a grain of salt, as with any advice off of Google, but the advice is out there.
Right. And you just have to keep trying until you find the one that works for you, because one size doesn't fit all.
It's very personal,
and you just keep trying until something works.
Throw everything at the wall and see what sticks.
Right. So it's challenging to no longer be the person you were. And I think for us, knowing with the illnesses that we have, that they're not going to get better. It's not like I have the flu, it's going to be horrible for 10 days, but then I'm going to feel better. We're not going to get better. So that for me is challenging, of knowing that the things that I used to be able to do and I can't do now, I'm not going to be able to do them again. They're gone. And
for me, knowing that I'm going to get worse. I'm 23. I'm pretty much as healthy as I'm going to be. So I am going to get worse as I get older. That's kind of a given.
Well, I think the one thing to kind of finish up with is that you said something, Terry, that you're not the person you used to be. And I think there's that perception that the things that you can do define the person that you are. And so I would counter and say you are still the person that you were before. You just have to reframe what that person can do. You still have the same skill set. You still have the same, mental capacity, the same dark humor.
That's never going away.
But I think you have to learn to manage, and you have to get creative. Almost, if we did a financial set, you have to budget your energy. And you have to get creative and figure out more creative ways. And you challenge yourself to, how can I do the same with less energy? Think of, if you're with a business, if you want to be more profitable, how can you do more with less? And that's, I think, when you're dealing with something physically, or emotionally, if you're divorced or let's say your spouse dies and now you have your kids on your own, how are you going to fill the role of two parents, or increase your ability to parent those children on your own? I mean, that's where really, you have to get very resourceful.
And it causes you to reprioritize things that I used to think were really important. Now I'm like, whatever, it's not a big deal. I used to, I would never leave the house unless I was dressed, not necessarily fancy, but I would never go out in like sweats. There, it's just now I'm like, I'm just going to the grocery store, sweats, totally good, because it honestly doesn't matter.
I think Lauren and I have our saying is, we just don't have the emotional capacity for this. There's drama in the family or in friends, and it just gets to the point you're just like, you know what, I just don't have the capacity for this in my life. So I'm just going to move on and just not even, it's just not worth my energy and time. I want to spend it elsewhere. And I think that's an important piece to realize, is the one thing you don't get back is time, but you have total control over where you spend it. And that's up to you.
And not even just where you spend it, but how you spend it. Like, this is going to be an example that I guess might not hit home with a lot of people, but like, so I play a lot of video games, and there are multiple ways that you can control the game itself. There's your like Xbox controller, or you can use your computer's keyboard and mouse. And so in the past, I would like to use like the Xbox controller, because I thought it was more intuitive. But I've found out that it's a lot harder on my joints to use that. It's like I get a lot of joint pain if I use that for a really long period of time. So, if So in order to, do what I like more, I've had to adapt and, use the keyboard and mouse instead of the Xbox controller, just because I can do it more comfortably that way. And it's a compromise. I can't do it necessarily the way that I prefer as well, but I can still do it. So
that's a win.
Yeah. And it's, when you have these chronic illnesses, sometimes it might sound like a little thing, Xbox controller versus doing, but when you encounter these obstacles throughout the day, it is like leaving little pieces of yourself behind. That's what I always feel like, oh, I used to be able to do this and there was no problem. Now I can't. That little piece has been left behind. Yeah, I've adapted and I figured out some other way, but it does start to erode at you, and you have to learn how to be okay with it. And I'm still learning.
It's finding these little things you can do to just save yourself that little extra energy, use your time a little bit better, and just, get these little wins throughout the day.
And learn how to celebrate those little wins.
Definitely. Very well said.
Okay.
Well, I think everybody, thank you for hanging out with us. Hopefully you made it to where you were going, and hopefully you're somewhere where you can give us a quick 5-star review or thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. But we're super grateful for you for hanging out with us today and listening. And hopefully you found this helpful. And obviously we come from very different perspectives in terms of the experiences we've had, but I think all ending in down the same path of figuring out what works for you. Anxiety is normal. You got to have to hopefully figure out a way to cope with it, and and hopefully you found you could connect with either Caleb or Terry or myself, and all of us are more than happy to connect with you and chat with you about our stories, and hopefully help you out if anything similar that you wanted to chat about. But I think other than that, I think we've reached our end of our show today. Yes. So thanks for hanging out with us, guys, and we look forward to seeing you or talking with you on the next episode.
All right. Bye.